there was a real fear of intimacy, like just with people, not even romantically, just anybody, like getting to know people and getting to be seen for the me that I am and not the, traumatized me I was before, where it wasn't really me at all.
Welcome to the Conscious Leadership Podcast, where soulful entrepreneurship and holistic mind-body wellness meet to help you heal, discover your soul's purpose, and change the world. I'm your host, Gabby Ortega, entrepreneur, psychology expert, social media maven, and soulful leadership coach. And it's my mission to empower you into becoming the light leader you're meant to be. Each episode will be diving deep into topics that will help you gain personal mastery over your healing and mind-body wellness, while also giving you practical tips and tools to help you create, market, and scale a heart-centered business around your soul's purpose and life mission. Whether you're in the beginning of your self-awakening journey or a seasoned inner work god or goddess who's ready to step into their leadership as a soulpreneur, this is going to be your new favorite place to be. We know that you don't just want to feel happier and more fulfilled, but you want to deeply know yourself and powerfully step into your life's purpose while creating massive abundance around your mission. That's why I've created this podcast for you, the light leader of the next generation. Welcome home. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Gabby Ortega, CEO and founder of Om Therapy Coaching, and I am so happy to have you back again for this particular episode that we have with Beatrice of the Self-Love Fix podcast, and she is just an all-around badass. So I've been following Beatrice for a hot minute, actually I should say like a year probably, and just everything that she has on her page is so positive and so uplifting and so empowering. I love the community she's built, and I was just so glad that you said yes to coming on this podcast because I know just how busy you are, so thank you for taking the time. And just so you guys know, Beatrice is a self-love and embodiment coach. She's an astrologer and the host of the Self-Love Fix podcast, like I mentioned, and she helps women embody their worthiness through aligning with their truth and shifting from lack mindset to a mindset of abundance and desire. So welcome to the podcast, Beatrice.
Hey, thank you for having me, Gabby.
No, it's literally like my pleasure and my huge honor. So thank you for taking the time to spend some time with our audience and our community here today and give us a little bit of the wisdom that you have so much of.
Yay.
So I would just love, I guess, like, because we both kind of talked about this before we got started, but both of us have gone through trauma. Both of us have had like some journeys. So maybe you can share a little bit about your journey and like where you come from and how you have really come into this space where you stepped into so much love and light and empowerment. Like you literally, from your pores, you guys, like if you've never followed her, from her pores, she just emanates like love and like light and just like joy. So, and I mean that, like, it's one of the reasons I love following you. So yeah, tell us about your story.
Yeah. So, okay. Back in grad school is when this all kind of unfolded. So I was going to grad school in order to become a registered dietitian and also to get a master's. And so it was like a dual program situation. And when I was in grad school, like a lot of my perfectionism started to come out, and because I was in a different state, different city, and didn't have my normal coping mechanisms, I guess, like my outlets and everything like that. So it was just me. So all of these parts of me that I didn't recognize started to come out, and I had no way to soothe myself. And so the perfectionism hit hard, particularly when, so we had preceptors, kind of like how nurses do rotations. It's the same thing for dietitians. And so one of my preceptors, she gave me like, it was something like a 3 out of 5 as an evaluation. And it's like, not even bad. It's literally average, but it wasn't a 5. And so I was like, I panicked, I freaked out. And I was like, what is going on? Why is she seeing me as average? Like, what, did I do something wrong?
You saw my face though, because I'm you. Like when I was like 3.5, I immediately went, oh my God, that's so rough. And you're like, that's average, because it's like, oh no, we're both perfectionists.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it was the way that I couldn't stop crying, and I was panicking and I was freaking out. But I noticed that my roommates, which were also fellow students or fellow classmates, like they were just fine. They were unbothered by the evaluation. They were like, oh, we just started out. They told us this is to be expected. But I realized something must be going on with me that, for me to be that derailed. And for the first time in my life, it wasn't me going like, what's wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? It was like, where did this come from?
More curious.
Yeah, it was curious, where I was used to like beating myself up for just not being like everybody else. And so I followed that. I was like, yeah, where did this come from? And so the interesting thing that unfolded, by the way, I went to grad school in like South Texas, like the deep Texas. And this is relevant for a reason, because there were two preceptors that tried to get me into meditation to help me like relax and to just ease my mind off of things. And I was like, you know what? I was always resistant to it, but I was like, there are two people from the south of Texas. And I'm like, and I'm not trying to like label anybody or anything like that, but that's the last place I would have expected somebody to tell me about meditation, because I'm from California. Like, if anything, I would have thought that's where I would have got the thing from.
It's literally the only place I like heard about meditation was when I moved to California.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you see, like, and so I was like, if I'm hearing it twice and I'm hearing it here, I should try it. What have I got to lose? And that's when it really started like happening. Everything, like all this, like my mind and all of these thoughts I had in my head that I was like, where are these coming from? It just kept unfolding from there. Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, I had a very similar experience. Like, when I first learned about meditation, I came out here and I started taking yoga, and that was like my first, like, at the end of Shavasana, I was like, ooh, I like this. And then I started like seeking it out a little bit more. And it's really, really curious. Like, I'm glad it's more like widely talked about, but like it's really a game changer when it comes to like figuring out and getting curious about yourself in a non-judgmental way versus sitting there and like I would like attack myself like all the time. Like, I'd be my worst inner critic, and I'm like attacking myself, and rather than kind of questioning the thought and separating from the thought and saying, okay, I'm going to actually observe what's happening in my brain and my mind and my body without judgment. Like, before I did that, I was attached to everything. And that drove my emotional responses, because everything just deeply affected me. And I took everything that was coming up in my head from my experiences, like my automatic thoughts and reactions, as truth. And I think meditation is like one of those things that just like, if you can really get still and find safety in the stillness, you can hear yourself breathe for the first time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you begin to catch wind of like the difference between your thoughts and you. And it's pretty transformational, I would say.
Oh yeah. I laughed. I was like, oh my God, my thoughts aren't me.
Yeah.
Like, that was like a weird thing to think. Like, you are not your thoughts. And in psychology, we call this, oh my gosh, starts with an M. Oh my God, I'm going to think about it and then I'm going to remember the word, mind. Anyway, it's observing your thoughts. No, it's not mindfulness. There's something else. My mom is a psychologist. She always uses this term and I'm forgetting about it now. But it's basically like introspection, another version of the word of introspection, but basically turning your attention inwards on thinking about your thoughts. And like, we never really think about our thoughts. We kind of just think our thoughts and take action. And meditation really helps you think about your thoughts in like a kind of a distanced way, because like if you are a trauma survivor, a lot of those automatic thoughts come from like remnants and scar tissue of the trauma you've experienced, especially the negative things.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. And that's what I discovered in that time when I was in grad school. I was like, whoa, I all of my stuff from my childhood really started to come out. And I think I had ended up going down the Google rabbit hole when I found out about the term narcissist. I was like, what's that? And then I just discovered a lot about my own family and how I was raised. And I couldn't believe it. It was like, I don't even know what you call those, like, the dolls where you take.
Oh, the Russian dolls, like where
the Russian dolls
inside.
It was like it couldn't stop. Like I just kept. There was more and more and more, and that's what it was like. It was. I'm not gonna lie. It was a lot to accept that the things that happened. when I was a child. I don't know if that's something you can relate to too.
It was. I think one of the things that I was very surprised about during my healing journey and recognizing how many wounds I had from childhood was the amount of grief that I felt. Um, I think that's something that we don't talk about enough of, which is this idea that the healing journey is, quote, painful and we have to look at things, but the most painful part was the grief that I started to feel for myself and my inner child and the child version of myself when I started to realize how hard she had it and how hard she
Yeah.
tried and all the ways in which she needed to be loved that she couldn't be loved. And like then recognizing on top of that how hard I've been on myself as an adult and that I haven't made it any easier for my inner child.
Mm.
I've actually perpetuated the same abuse and the same toxic, mindset that like I was put onto me and caused me trauma. And so that grief and that shame around, oh my God, I've been doing the same thing to myself that people were doing to me that I hated so much, was
Mm.
really the hardest part for me.
Yeah. Oh my God. The grief is so real. It's double grief because it's like grief for yourself. And like you said, your inner child, and then grief for maybe the relationship you didn't get to have with your parents. Oh my God.
Make me cry on this podcast.
It was, yeah, I'm feeling it too, honestly, because that was experiencing both at the same time was really difficult for me initially because I had to try to do it alone initially. So
Yeah.
that was really hard. And it was like, I can't believe it. But there was definitely so much grief for the inner child. Like I would do these guided meditations and sometimes the memories would get unlocked of like being a kid and just feeling frozen. Because you know how that can happen sometimes where words can't come out and
Oh
you're
yeah.
like, I can't believe how did she do it?
Yeah. Yeah. How did she do it? I think a lot of everybody, if you're listening to this, I feel like a lot of you can relate to this. It's like, you realize, oh my God, like she's gone through a lot. And I think too, what then was hard to reconcile as well, if we're talking about more the childhood chaos and growing up with like parents who have like some mental stuff going on, whether it's narcissism, borderline, my father had his own mental illness happening that really affected me deeply. I think it's like I had to grieve that relationship that I never had / never would have, recognizing that like actually, this person has a limitation to
Mm,
what they're able to do. They're not able or willing to go on a healing journey, or they have and they've reached a point where that's as much as they're able to do.
mhm.
And I will never have, like, I love my dad and we have a really beautiful relationship now that has a lot of boundaries and it's like safe for me and it feels good for him and all of that. But like I was holding on to so much this idea for so long that like an anger that he wasn't this dad I wanted him to be. It wasn't the relationship I wanted it to be, and expecting it to be that. And when I finally let that go, it was really hard to be like, you know what? He's never going to be the dad that I really want and need. And I can also build a relationship knowing that this is his limitation in a way that still I can have him in my life. But it's never going to be what I would hope it would be, and that's hard. And a lot of us can't even like face that because it means just facing that amount of grief, which is really rough.
Oh yeah, it can be really tough too. And I think that with discovering all of the trauma, you have to ask yourself or come to the place where you're like, what kind of relationship do I want to have with my parents now? If I do, because for some people, having no relationship at all is helpful for
Yeah,
them.
absolutely.
Or like you said, with a lot of boundaries, it's like that can be tough too. Just trying to figure it out. But
Yeah.
yeah, accepting them as they are is like what I was getting from what you're saying is
Hard.
it's huge. And it frees you, but like it's not easy
No,
initially.
and it's something that you constantly struggle with too, because there'll always be moments where like you're like, oh, yep, there it is. Like, oh, yep, yeah, no, and it reminds you, yeah, there's limitations on this person and what they're able to give, and then also like kind of a side grief, talking about grief, but like a side grief that I experienced too was then recognizing what I learned about trauma and actually seeing that my parents were very traumatized and being angry. Like, I had this experience and I'm like, oh great, fuck you guys, I love you, but fuck you guys, now I have to actually go back and like deconstruct this stuff and like put it back together. And like also being like, oh my God, like the trauma that they experience and that, you know, cause them to act in certain ways, like, you know, wow, that sucks. And I feel really badly that they had to go through that too. So to hold both of those is
Yeah.
really hard.
Oh my God. It literally, I'm telling you, there's so many layers to this. It's true. It's so true. Even with my experience, because I was raised in a home with a narcissistic mother. And for the longest, I held a lot of resentment. And because there's a lot with my particular situation, there is just, it's going to be really difficult for her to ever see the pain that she's caused me or the pain she's caused other people. It's like you said about limitations. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And so I really held a lot of resentment with that. But then when I began to see, the interesting thing was when I began to see the parts of me, like my own shadows, like the parts of me that I pretended like I didn't participate in, but I did, that she also did, or that I learned from her. When I started to accept them is when I started to see like, whoa, there's much more to this. Like, it's easy, I think, to label people as things or their conditions. But when you begin to see like we're way more nuanced than that, like we express behaviors, we're capable of expressing behaviors.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't operate in them 24/7 like some of our parents have, but we can at some capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. And then, you know, trying not to hate that part of yourself where you're like, oh, that's that.
I know, it's like that. And that's been even to this day, like, okay, so I'm running a program called Self-Love Over Codependency right now. And this time around, I'm doing something different where I'm having us look at different aspects, like the perfectionistic part of us, the critic, and like the controlling part of us, like all these different aspects, and zooming in on them and seeing that we play into these roles in particular times, like maybe when we're stressed, maybe when we're scared, when we don't feel safe, and actually getting to know them, like holding space for them type of thing.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? Like with the shadow work thing? Because when I first started all of this, I was like, I only want to think about the good stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, like, I was like, how do we move forward? Like, how do we just like, you know, that stuff happened. And it's like you know, it's like distracting my life. But like, I think we should just focus on the future. No, I was very much like not looking at it. And I think too, it is like the hardest to like notice bits of myself that are like kind of the not so great aspects of like my parents who raised me, and like being like, ooh, there's that. It's like like I know for me, I have a tremendous amount, like less so, I would say, I shouldn't say tremendous, but I used to have a tremendous amount of anxiety about everything. And because of that anxiety and needing to have control over my environment, over what's happening, over what the plan is, I pushed a lot of people away because I'm like, hey guys, what's the fucking plan for vacation, guys? Guys, did you get your tickets yet? Guys, where are we staying? Guys, what's the price? Guys, I'll organize it. Oh my God, you guys, and it's like, nobody wants to go on vacation with you. Like, nobody wants to go on vacation with you. And it's because of my anxiety. My mom was a very anxious person. She came from Cuba. She's an immigrant, and, you know, had to deal with a lot coming here during the missile crisis too, which was like, you know, like, or a little bit after, because everybody hated Cubans, you know? And so like her having to navigate that, oh my God, I even forgot where I was like going with this just now. I was like thinking about all the shit that she had to go through. But
you were talking about like anxiousness
and
the
anxiety, yeah. So when you lose your environment like that, like everything becomes anxious. You're in a new place, you're in a new country, there's a new language, like, so everything is dangerous. And so when I was growing up, to protect me, she was like, the world is a very dangerous place. And there's like, you never know, you're gonna get kidnapped, you're gonna get like molested, like don't ever get in a car with anybody. Like we used to watch SVU, like Law and Order. I was like, I'm like, this is not appropriate. So like I grew up with this kind of like, you have a lot of power and sovereignty, and everything in the world is dangerous. And so like what ends up happening for me was like such a like intense overwhelm just being an adult, like living on like being on my own, because I felt unconsciously this like kind of trauma around the world and being like, everything feels so dangerous, everything is so scary. And then the way it comes out is like that self-sabotage and pushing people away, or like being too controlling, or, being, and so I think like really identifying and taking time to look at those parts of ourselves. Like, I'm a little bit selfish sometimes, I'm a little bit controlling sometimes. It doesn't make me a bad person, but like you said, it's like inviting those parts. And like in Buddhism, like my Buddhist teachers were like, invite them in for tea. Like these are not, have them come in for tea and give them comfort and warmth and a place to rest. Yes. And if you can approach these shadows as really tired, really burnt out parts of yourself that are just, because all parts of you are worthy and lovable and wonderful, but you have to invite them in and be like, what are you trying to tell me? So like my anxiety was telling me that I was very scared of the world. Okay, that's something we can heal. That's something we can work on. We don't need to have this be a shadow for us, or, oh, I'm being really selfish. Well, what is that telling me? It's telling me that I'm there's fear around like letting go of things, or there's fear around trusting that someone else will be there for me. And like, oh, wow, let's talk about that.
Yes.
All of our shadows are just like parts of ourselves that need to be excavated a little bit and shown the light of compassion. And I always talk about, I love Brene Brown. She's like, shame can't live where compassion shines. And if you shine that light and you invite them in, you don't have to, you integrate the shadow. And that's where, that's where all the healing happens.
Yes, that's so true. It's like, I love that idea of inviting them in for tea. Oh, I love that. And it makes me think about with you talking about Brene Brown, especially because she talks about vulnerability a lot. And that was, and I'm not sure about you, but for me, I was like this icy queen, super icy, didn't want to let anybody in, like not really initially, because I would have described myself as really codependent and somebody who wanted to let everybody in. But as I was working through a lot of my trauma, then I became like this icy person, because I'm like, I don't want anybody to get in unless I can be sure that I can trust them.
Like there's application, there's a screening process.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like I would it was like I was not connected to my emotions at all, and I wouldn't show them, and I just put up this front like everything was always fine and I was always okay. And it's like I didn't realize that the part of me that like why that was happening is because there was a real fear of intimacy, like just with people, not even romantically, just anybody, like getting to know people and getting to be seen for the me that I am, and not the, traumatized me I was before, where it wasn't really me at all.
Yeah. I feel like so much of like the trauma version of myself too was not me. And it's funny, like thinking about her and just being like, damn.
Yeah.
That poor like, girl.
I know. Sometimes I think about it, and I was just trying to think about it the other day, and I'm like, the weird thing is when I have memories of who I was before, it's like, I feel like I wasn't even there.
Yeah. 100%. It's funny. I wonder if anybody listening can relate to that, because I feel like that's such a common thing. It's like, I was almost like watching a movie of my life happen, and I was playing a part, but I never felt like I was living. I never felt like I was actually present for my life.
Yeah. That it's so crazy that when I look back at it, I'm like, and that's why I feel like so many of the memories aren't even there too, is because I wasn't really there, or you weren't really present, I guess.
Yeah, it's like going through the motions, because you kind of are given, like the way I saw it was like, you're given like a script and kind of like a thing to follow by society and culture. And like, you know how to dress to look a certain way, you know how to act so that people think you're a certain way, you know how to, do things so that you can appear pretty good and normal and everything. So like, why that should be everything that should make you happy. That should be like, just follow those things. And I felt like I was very much like a passive player. I was just following kind of this prescription of what everybody in culture and society and media like told me I should be doing and looking like, and how my relationship should be. And I was like acting, and it just felt like I was acting in a role, and I was never myself. And now that I am, I'm like, oh my God, what a difference. Like how much more fulfilled I feel, how much happier I feel, how much more present I feel. But to get here was like, I had to actually like figure out who I wanted to become, because my entire, and this is like, I mean, if you've listened to the podcast, you've like, you guys who are listening, you've heard me talk about this before, but like, that's why childhood, like growing up in a chaotic childhood, not even necessarily experiencing direct abuse, but even just like emotional neglect, or having a parent who's a narcissist, has narcissistic tendencies. And I had that too. It's like that causes a really insidious kind of trauma called complex trauma, which is like, it's not just a traumatic event where, you know, with one trauma, major trauma, you already have your identity formed. You know who you are. You have something really horrible happen to you, like a car accident. That doesn't fundamentally change how you see yourself. It doesn't affect your personality necessarily, unless you have brain trauma, and you maybe have some anxiety, but your actual personality doesn't change or anything. But when you go through that kind of chaotic childhood, then what happens is your whole identity is created around the trauma. And so that's why it's so insidious, because you're at the time of your formation of who you are as a human being. And as you're figuring out who you are and your relation in the world and where you belong and what your value is, all of those experiences are giving the information that you're inputting to make those decisions, right? And so, of course, if you grow up with like, you maybe a parent who doesn't really see you and doesn't really attune with you emotionally and can't really get there, you know, and like meet you where you are, that basically trains you to kind of see yourself as like, oh, no one's going to understand me. My things aren't important. My voice doesn't need to be heard. I need to be in service of others. It's safer for me to people please, because that's now your personality, because you've experienced this at such a formative stage of your existence. So like, your program that you're doing that we just talked about, not the one that's now, but the one that's coming up, I'm really excited about, because it's all about like, how do you deconstruct, right? That kind of you have deconstructed, and now like, how do you move forward? Like, how do you figure out who you want to become? How do you create a personality or identity that no longer is so deeply infused with everything you've experienced, you know, growing up, and then probably to this point as well? I'm sure there's been other things, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with Embodied, my 4-month group coaching program that you were mentioning. Yeah, it's like, it's that next step, because just like with what you were saying about following a prescription of how everybody told you how to do things, it's like, that's literally what the experience with childhood trauma is. You just have a rubric. You're so used to following a rubric. And so now as you're excavating all these parts of you, now it becomes, okay, how do I get like in line? I talk about this thing of personal power a lot in Embodied, where it's like, how do you shift now to like, I can make things happen for me, or I actually want things this way. I feel like growing up the way that I did, it was never about what I desired or never about what I wanted, but just how I could keep safe and how I could just get by, like literally just get by in every capacity. Like, with school, it's like, okay, how can I get a job that will make sure that I can just pay bills and, you know, live okay? Or, right. And then with relationships, it's like, how can I just find somebody who's just, I don't know, it's just okay. Like,
how can I find somebody who's going to like pay some attention to me?
Yes, or there you go.
Like tolerable. Like
tolerable. That's the word. Yeah, that's it. It's like, how can I just find somebody who's just, it's okay. I can handle it, kind of a thing. And that's something, even with one of my clients in Embodied, we just wrapped up yesterday. It's so sad. But she was talking about this thing of like, I found somebody who's healthy and good and things are cool. And I could just hear it in her voice. I'm like, but is this what you desire though? Like, is it what you desire? Because she was like, but I've never had anything like this before where it's healthy. And how about this idea of somebody can be healthy and have those basic things that we're looking for and hopefully we're just getting involved with healthy people, period. That should just be the thing.
Yes.
But it's like, that should just be the thing. So it's like, what about that and the things that you actually really desire? And I think that, sure, there's room for when we're dating or getting to know people that we might change what we thought was important because it just looks different now. But it's like, if you're there already with the person and you're realizing like, oh, I've got the itch for something more. We don't really learn that. We don't really learn that with childhood trauma, that like you can actually want more.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I think it's like, what comes to mind is like, for me, it was like, I just want to like be okay. I just want to be neutral. Like, if I could just be like neutral, that would be a fucking win. But you guys, like, we can have so much more than just okay. Like, we can have so much more than just tolerable. And it's like, just because you have grown up and you have tolerated a lot of shit and you've put up with a lot of stuff and you're tough, doesn't mean you have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right? You, just because you've dealt with horrible situations, you've dealt with pain, you've dealt with loss, you've dealt with people who are really difficult, doesn't mean you have to continue to do that. And it doesn't mean you have to settle for people who are just okay because you can now breathe. You can, that's fine, but you can also really surround yourself with people and things and make a life where you are thriving at like 500%. You know what I mean? And that's even better. You know, we don't need to stay in a state of tolerating life. That would just be like, that's not living.
It's not living. Yes, exactly. And I think that's where I talk a lot about scarcity versus abundance. And I've learned, like, I think the older that I get, the more that I see that things are a lot simpler than I thought it was. Yeah. And I thought it was initially, because I feel like I just look at things differently. And so like, I've realized that with trauma, it's like you literally learn scarcity in every area of your life. Like with abandonment wounds, it's like I have to latch on to everybody because there's an idea that there's not enough or there won't be somebody there. Or even with money. Like, yes. Yeah, I think
that's like a whole other conversation, but like, I'm glad you're mentioning that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really like the hush hush, don't talk about it. But then we're suffering. We're literally suffering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like all these aspects of scarcity, but it's like stepping into abundance in my eyes is really stepping into desire, which is the thing we didn't get to do or the thing we didn't learn because it was bad for some reason. Like, did you learn that like desiring things, somehow somebody loses when you desire something, somehow something goes wrong, or it's just selfish?
Yeah, I definitely, here's where I was always encouraged to be great. And then there were, I would say like, oh man, I hope he's not listening to this. My dad, love him to death. He was dealt with severe depression and narcissistic tendencies and also diagnosed borderline and bipolar. And so what I really learned was like, I actually shined a lot as a child. Like I was a concert pianist and I played in Carnegie Hall when I was 15 years old. And I was playing concerts every year and dancing and singing and doing all these like theater things. But every time that I would have a big event or a big showcase or I'd have a concert, something bad would happen. And it was usually my father would have like a meltdown. He would make a scene. He'd scream at another parent in the audience over something. He would be like really late because he couldn't find a parking spot. But really what it was is that he was just like, there was a lot of just like, it had to be about him, I think, or there was something that was, and that's part of the narcissistic stuff, which is like, he couldn't really, I think there was some part of him that really couldn't stand that I was shining so brightly. And also I got bullied really severely in school for all of that, getting straight A's and like being a nerd and like loving learning. And like, well, I'm the kid who was like, oh, the teacher. And they were like, oh, gross, And so what I really learned in kind of like the way I responded to trauma was like having things or like having nice things or excelling or being special meant like you were going to be attacked and punished and you should just shut the fuck up kind of a thing. And so that's how I, like, for me personally, kind of went through the scarcity abundance thing myself. But yeah, it's a real thing.
Oh my God, that is such a real thing about how I can relate to that too in my childhood. It's like, It's funny how talking to other people, it unlocks memories you forgot all about because it was the same thing for me too. Whenever there was, it was a moment for me in my childhood, there would be something going on with my mother where it'd be something, again, like you said, somebody would be late, she would be late, or there was some way to distract from whatever was.
Distract.
Yeah.
And like taking away from like the joy and being able to like actually feel safe in that moment where you're shining, or that moment where it's like you're allowed to be special, or it's about you. And that's hugely detrimental as an adult than using your voice or taking up space or starting a business or like doing something for yourself, because it feels like you're taking away or hurting somebody else because of these early experiences that were so chaotic, because it's like, oh yeah, when I want to shine, it's chaos.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, that is so true. This reminds me of a conversation I had with a client in Embodied a couple weeks ago. She was in an interviewing process. And one thing she mentioned is like how it's difficult for her to really express and talk about the qualities that she has to the interviewers, because growing up, it's like the same thing you were just mentioning, this thing of like, elevating yourself in any form just meant something bad was going to happen, or it just wasn't something we did as a family or something like that. And I told her how it's actually harmful. It could be harmful for yourself, because now when you're playing small, other people can't see. Like, it's really up to us to showcase the best parts of ourselves. And with her, like, the fear was, what if I come across as full of myself, or narcissistic, or like braggy?
Yeah.
Because there's also that too. It's like, what if I come across, and I told her, it's your energy though, because it's like, when people come across as braggy or, narcissistic, for lack of better words, you feel it, that they need your approval. They need your validation. It doesn't even feel good. It feels icky to listen to.
You can hear your intention.
Yeah, your intention. And then that's what I asked her, like, what's your intention? And then she realized, like, oh, I just really want to get this job. Like, I just want to get the job. So it's like, yeah, they're going to feel that when you, like, it's coming from that. So.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been such a juicy conversation. I'm so glad. Thank you for opening up and sharing yourself with us in such a vulnerable way, and talking about like your experiences with your family. And a lot of like my audience, like we all come from like chaotic childhoods. I feel like that's like my family. So we're all like, you're in good company. Like, it's really interesting. This journey of like, it's like this, almost this, like the first stage is like the realization and the coming to almost like the come to Jesus moment where you're like, oh, okay, this was not the way I thought it was. And then there's like the deconstructing of what happened. Then there's like the grieving, which I feel like then you have to grieve and go through a really painful part of this healing process. But then there's like the creation of the new me. And that changed my life completely. And just like, I want to say like, even like 5 years, I went from being like a raging alcoholic with severe depression, suicidality, PTSD symptoms. I couldn't sleep at all. Like, I had to take Ambien. I had like really severe sleep issues. When I started really unpacking my trauma, I started to sleep again, and I hadn't slept in 10 years. 10 years. I would like cry to all my doctors, like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And they're like, we don't know either. And I started to sleep through the night. And then I started to feel my body relaxing. And then and all of these things started unlocking. And then I got to realize, oh my God, I can create who I want to be. Like, what? And then like, that's to me the funnest part of this experience, because everything that I didn't get a chance to kind of do as a kid, because I was just so busy and I didn't have that chance to really explore what it was I liked, what I wanted to do, what my desires were, having that time later on after doing the healing work and being like, now I get to create who I want to become. Like, that was magical. And I mean, look, now I have a whole business and I have a great fiance and I have like a wonderful life. I feel so happy every day. I want to punch myself in the face. Like, I'm just like, who am I? It's kind of like this, like, and I'm sure you've experienced it too, that like, when you get to this stage where you're like, okay, I've grieved, I reconciled, I have a lot of self-awareness, and now I'm moving forward and I'm creating the life I want to live, and I have control over that. It's just the most liberating thing you could ever have, worth all the pain of the process, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it's so worth it. It's just like, Oh, it's worth it to live a life that feels good. That at the end of the day, I didn't even realize that was what I was looking for, is to just feel better. And that's what I got. And that to me is like more than enough, is to just every day feel better and
Yeah.
not be waiting for the ball to drop. That was what I was living like before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can relate to that.
It's like
Oh,
living, like walking on broken glass all the time. You like never know. Like you're like,
yeah.
there's like so much. No, but it's totally just such a beautiful gift to give yourself, to just like say, okay, it's gonna be a little painful. It's gonna be some crying. There's gonna be release. There's gonna be realizations. But at the end of this tunnel is like you get to be whoever you want to be. And if you don't know who that is, oh my God, how exciting! You get to figure that out.
Yeah. Exactly. And you get to do it without having all of these attachments to what other people want you to look to be like and look like and all of that. Like it's just you running the show now.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we wrap up, just tell us what you're doing with this like group, because I have never heard of a group that actually focuses not necessarily on like the unpacking of the trauma, but really this future self creation, which in my opinion is where therapy. I'm a therapist, I get it, but it's where I think
Yeah.
we sometimes drop the ball in therapy. Is like I haven't worked with anybody as a client myself or anything like that where we've really worked on this future self realization creation work. So I'm really excited that you're bringing this group into fruition. So like tell us what to expect, and like when is it happening, and like what's included. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
there are lots of people who would love to check it out.
Yeah. So it's going to start in late June and it's a 4-month program. And the whole idea behind it is really stepping into like this feminine energy aspect of ourselves that we don't really get to sink into because of, the childhood trauma and everything. It's all about like like do mode. And it's never about relaxing into who you are. And so there's so much when we can be in a state of receptivity and relaxing, you start to be open to receiving ideas about what do you actually want to do? What do you actually desire? And the whole idea is softening a little bit. And it's not, and when I say feminine energy too, I'm not talking like gender. It's more like that energy aspect of you that didn't get to be expressed, the creative part of you, the desire, the wisdom. Like something I really explore is connection to the body, because I believe that trauma creates distrust of the body.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, distrust. And I think one really big thing with feminine energy is like trusting your body. Like in astrology, I say this, oh my God, I feel like a broken record because I literally say this all the time. It's actually at this point obnoxious. I'm not even gonna lie. But to me, it's so like monumental when I discovered it, that in astrology, when we talk about the moon, like I think with you, you're familiar with the moon sign.
Yeah.
But just really quickly, the moon in astrology represents like the mother, the body, and the emotions. And it's like when I understood it also represents the body is when everything changed for me. Oh, and also intuition and the subconscious. So it's like your body, it actually holds wisdom and is actually connected to your subconscious, and is actually, your body is a home because the moon also represents the home. So it's like if you can come back home to yourself, all of a sudden you can start to feel comfortable with your desires. Oh, I want this job. I don't actually want that. Oh, I actually want to bring in more money to my life. And I don't really feel guilty about that because it's going to help me do things that I want to do. So it's like stepping into being more limitless instead of having limitations. It's basically, I'm going to be honest, like structureless, because that's kind of like feminine energy. It's like,
That's the epitome of feminine. It's like flow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's difficult for me to explain what this is about, because it's really a journey inward for you to shift back into your own knowing.
That's
And
very clear.
yeah, oh, it's clear. Okay. I was gonna say it's like this is about, it's not about structure and rubric. It's about how can you use your body wisdom to really know and step into who you are.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And I know we have to wrap it up, but I will say this. I was having a conversation with somebody too, and just even looking at the feminine wisdom and the body wisdom from just being just a woman, we were literally killed for it for centuries.
Mm,
For being
yeah.
having our sexual power, for having intellectual power, for having witchy intuition, and for having, I mean, look at the Salem witch trials and the way that medicine women were burned at the stake. Like,
Yeah.
we actually have, like, as women, like generational trauma around even using our voices and stepping into our desire and allowing ourselves to be trusting of our bodies and intuition, because we have been so traumatized to not trust our bodies and to, be, and even like, we were married off to people and we had to have sex with those people and we had to have children with those people and raise families, and that's the way it worked, and you didn't have a say. It's like literally, even if your body was screaming, I don't want this, everyone was saying you have to. And so, even going deeper, it's like we as women really need to heal our relationship with our bodies, with our sexuality, with our inherent intuitive powers and abilities, because we are very connected. We are, like, even if you choose not to use this, or if you're female identifying, I still believe you have this, but we are portals. Like, we are portals from the spirit realm to the earthly realm. Like, we birth children and we take spirits and we put them into bodies and we bring them out into the world. Like, we are fucking magical, and have a lot to offer in that realm with our intuition and with our body wisdom. And it's also about healing that kind of the way that we've really been pitted against ourselves in that way for a very long time.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so true. I believe that. It's like, for too long, centuries, like this has been stolen. It's really been stolen. I feel grateful to be like here in this time where there's a lot of freedom, or even just living where we live, a lot of freedom around not having to be forced to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. Oh, Beatrice, thank you for being here. This has been such a nourishing conversation, for me at least, and I hope for you as well, and for everybody listening. And this is like a journey. Trauma recovery, post-traumatic growth, like, it never ends. And I love what you've created with your container. And I think what a beautiful opportunity to, instead of like forcing curriculum down people's throats,
Yeah.
like, I'm going to meet you where you are, and we're going to like actually go start where you are and go where you need to go at your pace, and like in ways that feel good for you, which again is like teaching and mirroring, like, trust where you are, trust your body, trust what's feeling good, trust the intuitive process. Like, I want you to tell me, like, and communicate, like, let's have a flow in that sense, so it's always working for you, versus this is the curriculum, this is the weeks that we're doing these things, you have to follow this order, and then like they're not getting the individualized expansion that I think they're going to get with you in this program.
Right. Yes. Which is why I'm teaching it live, and why, for that very reason, it's like, let me meet you where you're at. So yeah, I'm excited. And I've had so much fun on this podcast of yours. It's awesome. This is awesome.
Oh man, thank you so much. And for those of you who would like to check her out and go check out her Instagram page, be part of her community, go join her classes, I'm going to drop all of her information in the show notes for you. Her new program starts in July. Right? Yes.
June.
June. Okay, starts in June. See, I'm glad I checked. Starts in June. So you guys have like a month, but like really go check her out. Also, low key, she's been doing these fucking crazy, amazing birth chart readings for like celebrities. And I know you don't like, it's not like the main thing you do at all. It's just something you do for fun, but they're so fun to watch. So if you want to get like tea on people that you know, like in the celebrity sphere, and you want to know about their birth charts, go check out her videos too on that. I love those. They're so good.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will be back next week with a new episode. And like I said, you can find Beatrice online on Instagram at, what is your handle?
The Self-Love Fix.
The Self-Love Fix. I wanted to be sure before I like set it out there, and we'll put it in the show notes. So thank you, Beatrice, for being here, and thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Gabby.
And that's our episode for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us at the Conscious Leadership Podcast. I'm so excited. This next year, 2021, is going to be huge. We have so many guests that are coming on that you are going to love. I'm going to be doing some more solo casts and Om Therapy coaching. We have so many things rolling out for you. Retreats, another round of Ignite starting in May, another one starting at the end of the summer, a mastermind, and so many other things. So be sure to stay tuned with us on Instagram. Follow me at om_therapy_coaching and stay tuned for so much goodness coming up. As always, I would love to hear your feedback. Head over to iTunes and leave us a review, and I would love to give you a free copy of my Subconscious Reprogramming Workbook, and that is absolutely free. Just send me a screenshot of your review and on Instagram, and I will be so happy to send that over as my gift for you. And I am sending you so many hugs, so much love, and I hope that this week you are able to find just a little bit more joy in your life. Have a good one, guys.